A successful interview is critical to solving cases of abuse and crimes involving people living on the autism spectrum.
Individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities who have experienced abuse or been a victim of a crime have to be treated with the same compassion and understanding as any other person. They should learn to communicate with each person and figure out how to make them feel comfortable so they can tell their story in their way, on their terms, and at their pace. Empathy, compassion, and patience are key.
What we have seen historically is that a lot of cases involving people with disabilities weren't being investigated, and even fewer of them were being prosecuted. But we have seen a shift in the approach investigators take. First, investigators are recognizing that people with disabilities don't all need to be treated with kid gloves, and you shouldn't treat them as more fragile than the general population. All people with disabilities fall on a spectrum in terms of their skills, abilities, and ability to communicate. Investigators should get comfortable with thinking about and understanding disabilities in general. And second, investigators should recognize that all individuals with disabilities have differences in the nature and severity of their disability and develop the skills to be able to tailor their approach accordingly during an interview.
In our video on intellectual and developmental disabilities, we briefly touched on autism, but in this video, we will go more in depth. First by defining the autism spectrum, and then by teaching you how to conduct a forensic interview with someone living with autism. Throughout our video series, we recommend using a multidisciplinary team, or MDT, approach when investigating abuses and crimes committed against adults with disabilities. The MDT approach can be very effective for an adult victim with a disability. It endorses the use of one interview of the victim in the presence of all MDT members, utilizing the principles of a forensic interview. As you will observe in this video, one interview of the victim gathers the necessary information for both Adult Protective Services, or APS, and law enforcement investigators, and is available to all MDT members, while minimizing the trauma of the interview process for the victim and increasing the chance of a successful prosecution of the offender. However, recognizing that most interviews are not conducted using an MDT interview approach, we want you to recognize that many forensic interviewing principles can be utilized during an interview of an adult with a disability or an older adult. Forensic interview practices generally include building rapport to help put the victim at ease and to assess the victim's level of development and understanding. Obtaining a narrative description of the event under investigation through open-ended questioning or specific non-leading or close questioning. Asking follow-up questions to obtain clarification. And ending the interview on a positive note. At the Massachusetts Disabled Persons Protection Commission, or DPPC, an adult protective service agency charged with investigating abuses committed against adults with disabilities, we recognize the benefits of a forensic interview, and in partnership with district attorneys, local and state police, service-providing agencies, and others, we are working to incorporate the best practices of forensic interviewing for every investigative interview of an adult with a disability, in both the prosecutor-based MDT approach and any other interview by APS and law enforcement investigators that, by necessity, occur without a multidisciplinary team present.
A forensic interview is a non-leading, non-suggestive, fact-finding interview that is neutral, trauma-informed, and victim-centered.
For a prosecutor, evidence is the most important aspect of a case. It's important for people to remember that forensic interviews themselves are considered evidence. Evidence is not just physical or tangible. In the eyes of the law, testimony is evidence, so a solid forensic interview can create reliable and sound evidence. If you have a case for prosecution, you may only have one opportunity for an interview where the victim provides the details of the crime. A team approach helps us to understand how best and under what circumstances to get a disclosure about what happened in a way that is less traumatic for the victim. For instance, when planning for an interview, we try to anticipate things that might make the experience more comfortable for a person, such as understanding their best time of day, if there are some medications that may have an impact on them, or if they want to have a trusted person there with them.
Autism spectrum disorder is a developmental disability caused by differences in the brain, according to the Centers for Disease Control. In some people, it is caused by a genetic condition. In other cases, the cause is not known. Autism spectrum disorder typically begins before the age of 3, though symptoms can improve over time. Some people on the autism spectrum may be extremely vocal and able to carry on a spoken conversation, while others may be non-speaking, speak few words, or utilize an augmentative or alternative communication device. People on the autism spectrum tend to be literal in their communication and can have a hard time comprehending figurative speech, exaggeration, and sarcasm, and sometimes repeat what they've just heard or have previously heard.
It is really important from the investigation point of view to find out who the people are in the individual's life and go to them for information. Find out what their relationship is and interview them. When it came to my son's situation, we started realizing that there were new behavior patterns, and we realized that those were directly associated with the trauma and anxiety of the abuse that was taking place. He was communicating, but only people who really knew him would have known that. Make it a standard part of your investigation process to go and seek out the people who can help interpret what is going on.
As an interviewer, it is important to know what it will take to create a safe and supportive environment for the person we are speaking with so that they can express what they need to express. This also means that we need to be prepared for the unexpected. By gathering as much information as we can about the individual, their disability, their communication ability, and their history, we can have an idea of what might cause upset, agitation, or aggression, and how they might react during an interview.
Make sure to set up the interview where it's going to be more comfortable for the victim, rather than making it more comfortable for yourself. It would be easier for me to conduct the interview in an interview room, a police station, or at their residence. But if that doesn't work for the victim or may upset them, I'm not going to get a good interview.
As a reminder, conducting a successful interview with someone on the autism spectrum requires you to listen.
As a best practice, it is important that we listen throughout an interview. People living with disabilities, their voices matter. To be prepared to actively listen, investigators should approach every case being as proactive as possible by learning as much as they can about the victim ahead of the interview to ensure they understand their communication abilities and needs. To effectively listen, investigators need to act with integrity, ensuring that in every investigation, they are respecting a victim's autonomy as well as their choices and decisions. Throughout each interview, we need to make sure that the victim knows their voice matters to us. Of course, safety is paramount throughout every investigation, including the safety of the victim and the investigator. Throughout your investigation and interview, always listen for any safety concerns. It is critical that we ensure our own safety and critical that we safeguard the victim's well-being, autonomy, and decision-making when it comes to safety. When we create a safe environment, victims recognize they can share their experiences openly and trust our team to do what is right. Our investigators understand that this process is difficult. We often meet people on the worst days of their lives. A trauma-informed approach to interviewing people living with disabilities recognizes the many emotions victims experience throughout the investigative process. Therefore, it's important that we meet them with sensitivity and support. A trauma-informed approach requires you to actively listen. Recognizing the difficulties and challenges, we need to be empathetic, meeting a victim where they are at, and tailoring an interview to meet an individual's needs. As we listen, we need to understand how victims use assistive devices, and we need to know when to adapt our communication. We need to ensure that in every interview, victims are given as much time as they need to understand and respond. And we are so much more successful when we work with and listen to our network. Here in Massachusetts, we are part of an incredible multidisciplinary team that gives us a network of support. Listen and lean on your network. When you lean on your network, you have a higher chance for a successful outcome, and most importantly, the victim, the survivor benefits.
One of the best things about working in a multidisciplinary team approach as a law enforcement officer is that information can be shared between team members in the initial critical stages of the investigation. For example, a DPPC, APS investigator, and law enforcement officer working together are legally able to obtain relevant information for the victim's interviews more efficiently and timely by using each other's regulatory and statutory access to otherwise privileged, private, or confidential information. And by using a multidisciplinary team for the victim's interview, we have access to all team members' expertise. A lot of law enforcement officers may not have been able to interview a person who has autism or who was born with Down syndrome. So working alongside someone who has been trained to interview persons with intellectual or developmental disabilities provides us useful tips for the interview process that will give us a better idea of what we may encounter during the interview.
Interviewers need to remember that each case is a new case. It doesn't matter if the individual has recanted a story or has lied in the past. Interviewers don't always know the full circumstances of that case, like if they were scared. You need to focus on what they are telling us right now.
A good interviewer is someone who has good technical skills and can understand the nuances of the cases, including semantic versus episodic memory, and can follow a protocol. They not only need to have the technical skills to do it, but also must listen and be adaptable, as well as patient. It's also important to recognize as an investigator, you're sometimes dealing with really difficult and often traumatic events that vulnerable people experience. Having a healthy way to respond to that, like talking with a professional if needed, is really important.
To put the listen and forensic interviewing principles into action, we want to show part of a mock interview with a person living on the autism spectrum. Here are the details. Late one evening, a young man living in a residential group home sustained serious injuries to his head and face, including broken teeth. Security camera footage from that night shows an employee of the home throwing the victim against the wall and onto the floor, face down in a common area. The footage shows the employee kicking the victim in the chest and at other times throughout the night going into the victim's bedroom, which is not equipped with security cameras. The first thing you must do is learn. This means preparing proactively to ensure the interview fits the needs of the subject.
Our investigations begin with an intake report that will list the allegations, as well as any known individuals and the reporting party's information. We then begin our background research. We check to see if there are any past reports involving that alleged victim or that alleged abuser, and reach out to the reporter and gather any additional information. We also gather what information we can regarding the individual's disability and communication ability. Sometimes we have a detailed history of the individual, including whether or not they have a guardian. So it's helpful for investigators to learn and find out as much information as they can to better relate and communicate with the individual.
While the case we are going to explore in this video features a speaking victim, in some cases, people living on the autism spectrum are non-speaking and can only communicate using augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC. AAC includes gestures and body language, sign language, pencil and paper, picture books or symbols, recorded speech devices, tablets, and speech-generated devices. Prior to the interview, be sure to be familiar and trained to use the AAC method the victim prefers. Fully charge any devices being used. Practice patience and be creative to facilitate communication. Speak up and follow up if the victim is being unclear. As with all interviews with people with disabilities, it's important to avoid infantilizing an individual with disabilities and assume normal intelligence unless multiple data points indicate otherwise.
When you are speaking with someone who uses an augmentative and alternative communication or AAC device, you need to be sure you are giving them time to respond to your questions and allow for multiple modalities. For example, you might provide them with a pen and paper if they choose to write or draw something in addition to using their device. Some augmentative communication devices are required to be pre-programmed, so you would need to know ahead of time if the user has the correct vocabulary pre-programmed to express what needs to be said. Some people might be able to type or spell that out, and it might help during an interview, but not everybody has that ability. One of the biggest mistakes people make when speaking with someone using an AAC device is trying to finish a sentence for them or finish their thoughts in an effort to make it easier on them. It is really important to give them time and listen, and then confirm what the message was, and confirm that you have interpreted the communication in the way it was intended. Another mistake we commonly see is presumed incompetence because someone is an augmentative communication device user, or because they have autism and the interviewer assumes the person has a lower IQ and decreased comprehension, when often that is not the case.
Before meeting the victim, it's important to schedule a time and place for the interview that works best for the interviewee. In the case of an assault victim, it's recommended that you select a neutral location, as the crime scene may cause anxiety. For this training, the mock interview is taking place in the family room at the Massachusetts Disabled Persons Protection Commission. The DPPC is the state agency in Massachusetts charged with investigating abuses committed against adults with disabilities aged 18 to 59. If the interview is being recorded, set up a video camera or audio device and remind the victim before the interview starts that it is being taped. In this case, the interview is not being recorded, and the victim is being interviewed by both the DPPC Adult Protective Service and the detective with the state police assigned to the DPPC.
Hi. Thanks a lot for coming in.
Offer to shake hands, but let the victim choose whether or not to engage. Beyond that, don't touch the victim. Make sure the person is comfortable. Provide water or another beverage, along with drawing paper, a pencil, and a stress ball. And be prepared for any challenges that may arise. Sometimes people living on the autism spectrum are sensitive to light. Don't make eye contact, laugh inappropriately, discuss topics unrelated to the conversation, and have preferences about the proximity they sit to an interviewer.
It is very important to find out ahead of time what might trigger or activate the person. For a person who's verbal and capable of communicating those things, ask them, what needs to be in this room right now? Who needs to be in this room right now? Do you need a piece of paper and a pen or something tactile? Do you want the interviewer to turn away while you answer? There are a lot of things that can build up and either make or break an interview, and it has everything to do with the environment and their personal needs.
The most important thing going into the interview is preparation, preparation, preparation. Know the case. Know what evidence exists or doesn't exist. Know what other information you need prior to the interview. Educate yourself about the victim and his or her disability. Know that an obstacle or a roadblock isn't the end of it. Just take a step back. Talk to APS investigators. Think outside the box. Think more globally. The best piece of advice I can give you is to be willing to go the extra mile, because I promise you, it will make a significant difference in the life of a victim.
While every individual is different and might have different preferences, interviewers should approach each case by ensuring the individual knows you are there to help and support them. Introduce yourself and develop a rapport to decrease anxiety. Ask open-ended questions, don't shout or yell. Take breaks whenever needed, and don't infantilize the interviewee. These steps are crucial to your overall goal of acting with integrity.
So if you're getting ready to interview someone with a disability, this is what I believe you should do. I know this might sound a little weird and funky, but maybe talk about them, maybe notice that you have a specific shirt on. Maybe be like, hey, is that, X thing? oh, do you know about X thing or something on those lines, that just start that slow connection of that. Because if they might feel a little bit more at ease, if you start off with something that's a little bit more off topic, a little bit more, I guess, fun to talk about, just to open them up a little bit more. Because here's the thing, this is a very sensitive topic to anyone, regardless if you have a disability, about what you went through.
Mr. Smith, I'm Ben Sullivan. I'm a trooper with the State Police Detective Unit at the Disabled Persons Protection Commission. With me today is Diane White, an investigator with the Disabled Persons Protection Commission. How would you like us to address you?
Call me John.
Okay, John. Would you like a glass of water?
No, thank you.
Okay.
It's nice to meet you, John. Before we get started, I want to let you know that we're going to take notes during our interview today. The reason we take notes is because it's important that what you tell us we write down correctly. Do you have any issue with us taking notes?
No.
We'd like to get to learn a little bit about you, John. What do you like to do in your free time?
I like to play piano. Luckily, where I live has one, and they let me play it whenever I want.
What kind of music do you like to play?
Mainly classical. Helps relax my mind.
What do you do during the day?
Let's see, what else do I do during the day? Most days I spend the morning at a learning program with other people my age.
Tell me about the learning program.
On the days where we're learning American history, it's great. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the math lessons, though.
What parts of American history do you love learning about?
Anything about George Washington. Right now we're learning about him crossing the Delaware, actually.
Taking the time to build a cordial and trusting relationship with the interviewee is crucial to laying the groundwork for the allegation portion of the interview and should be continued until it is clear the interviewee is comfortable talking with you. During this time, interviewers should prioritize making sure the interviewee feels safe speaking. During the interview process, an interviewer must demonstrate that they are listening to the victim and show that they are committed to the individual's physical and long-term safety and to protecting their privacy. It is important to remind the individual that they are in a safe place and that they are not in trouble. Interviewers are there to listen and to hear the individual's side of the story, and that it is okay not to guess the answer to a question, and they should not be afraid to say they don't understand a question or correct a mistake on part of the interviewer. It's also important for the interviewer to be conscious of their own safety in every interview, knowing that might cause agitation for the interviewee or, in rare instance, aggressive behavior.
A good investigator can create a safe environment anywhere. We avoid interviewing people in common areas where other people can walk by. This is important to the integrity of the investigation and comfort of the individual.
I remind the person I'm interviewing that they are not in trouble. I work for them to keep them safe. I tell them that I'm here to make sure that the staff or others who are helping them are doing it the right way. And if staff are not doing it the right way, and individuals are getting abused, neglected, or hurt, then that is not okay. People with disabilities deserve better.
John, there are some things we always tell people when we talk with them. We're going to be asking you some more questions today, and if you don't know the answer, tell us you don't know. It's okay you don't know the answer. We just don't want you to guess.
I understand.
And if we ask you a question that's confusing or does not make sense, please just tell me and we'll try to make the question clearer.
Very helpful, thank you.
Okay. If we should get something wrong, please correct me. Our job's to listen to you. We want to understand everything that you tell us.
Thank you.
If we ask a question that you don't want to answer, it's perfectly fine. Just let us know you don't want to answer. We'll only discuss what you feel ready to discuss. But if at any point you want to go back to a topic because you've remembered an additional detail, don't hesitate. Just stop us and we'll discuss it.
Thank you.
Before we keep going, I'd like to check in and see how you're feeling about talking with us.
I feel fine, thank you.
As the interview proceeds to the allegations at hand, it's important to use a trauma and empathy-informed approach to interviewing. Interviewers should use open-ended questions and present them in a way that doesn't seem interrogative in nature. The interviewee is the expert in their experiences. The goal should be to gather reliable information from the interviewee the best way that they can remember it.
Listening is essential throughout these interviews. It can be difficult in these situations if we have a specific agenda and sometimes we're too keen on getting that information. So we interrupt, or if they start to tell us other details and it's something that we don't think we need to know, we stop them from telling us. Now I teach the importance of letting them talk and the importance of us as APS and law enforcement investigators to listen.
I believe survivors should be treated regardless of disabilities, respect, and care. Because imagine if you were in that situation. Imagine if you were in that type of situation of being in their shoes, being hurt in specific ways, either through sexual assault or, in my case, physically assaulted by a teacher. It's something to take in consideration, because how would you want to be treated for that?
John, thank you for telling us more about yourself. Do you know the reason why we're meeting today?
Yes,
Tell me the reason why we're meeting today.
because I got hurt.
Okay. Tell me everything that happened when you got hurt.
I fell.
How did you get hurt?
I fell.
Okay. Take your time. When you're ready, tell me everything about you falling.
It was at night. I had just finished watching TV. I fell and broke my tooth, and it was very painful.
Tell us about it being painful.
No one believed me. They wouldn't even give me any medicine.
Tell us about them not believing you.
The nurse, she told me that I didn't look that bad, and that I didn't need any medicine and to just go to bed.
If the victim isn't saying much, they may be feeling worried, scared, or even embarrassed about what happened. Acknowledging a change in behavior like increased fidgeting or raising their voice can help the interviewer better understand the victim's emotions. Say something like, "I notice that your voice is louder now that we are talking about what happened. How are you feeling?" Do not say, "You seem angry," because the investigator should not assume the feelings or emotions of the victim. Once a change in behavior is acknowledged and the victim has stated how they are feeling, angry, for example, the interviewer can normalize the feelings by letting the victim know that sometimes people do feel angry when they talk about things that happened. The interviewer can reassure the victim that however they are feeling is fine. Sometimes briefly changing the subject can help the victim to talk more about what happened.
How do you feel about the group home?
It's fine, generally.
What are the things that are fine about the group home?
Well, I mean, there's the piano there, and my room is great, and I get to watch whatever I want to watch on TV.
Earlier you were telling me about falling and breaking a tooth. How did you fall?
I don't remember.
Okay. Tell me everything you do remember about falling.
I don't remember.
John, I see you're hitting yourself. Tell me about what you're feeling.
I'm just mad I don't remember.
For some people living on the autism spectrum, it is not uncommon to hit themselves or others. The behavior is not meant to be aggressive, but instead manifests when they become overwhelmed. These behaviors could also be pacing, rocking, hand flapping, hitting, fidgeting, or some self-stimulating behavior. If the individual engages in behaviors that are harmful to themselves or others, there are some strategies to redirect the individual. In some cases, those strategies are specific to the individual and should be discussed prior to the interview. If that is not the case, briefly changing the subject, using a calming tone, taking a break, separating from the individual, or alerting a caregiver may be necessary. If interviewers notice that the behavior happens multiple times, pay attention to the pattern or behaviors. It may be that the individual engages in behaviors when asked a certain type of question, when they are asked about a particular topic, when they don't know the answer or even don't want to talk about a topic. Pay attention to the patterns and avoid triggers if possible.
Interviewers need to always observe the individual's body language and demeanor, and any changes in their presentation as they ask about a specific incident that's difficult for them to discuss. Notice any changes in their behavior. Just as you listen to their story, it is also important to listen to their behaviors. This is why preparation is so important. If the investigator knows there are signs that the individual is deviating from their baseline, they'll be able to recognize that the situation could escalate.
In the case where you have a victim who is getting agitated and you aren't able to return to baseline, It's important to stop the interview and determine if you need to schedule an additional interview or if you have enough evidence to proceed without speaking with the person again. You can also speak with witnesses. Don't assume that just because someone has a disability that they are unable to be a witness to a crime.
What kind of TV shows do you like, John?
I'm a big fan of Jeopardy.
I like Jeopardy too.
John, I'm going to ask you one more question. It's okay if you don't want to answer. Is that okay?
Yes.
Did any of your housemates see you fall?
Yes. Tony did.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that with us. And we want to thank you for coming in today. We know these questions can be challenging.
You're welcome.
If it's okay with you, we'd like to schedule a time to speak with you again. You have our phone number. We'll reach out to you. But in the meantime, if you have any questions or if you need any help with anything, please call us.
I will. Thank you.
As the interview wraps up, it's time to reference the network. Reassure the interviewee about next steps and let them know about the resources in the team that has been assembled to help them.
Don't be afraid to end the interview by asking the individual questions. How do you feel? I know that was a lot. Is there someone here that you can talk to or decompress with? Can I have them come in the room before I leave? Would you like to go for a walk? What are you going to do after this? And then my final question is, do you have any questions for me? They almost always have questions about what is going to happen next. Interviewers need to be prepared to answer those questions. Interviewers can also ask individuals if it is okay to follow up and call them. If they say no, respect that, because you know they don't want to talk about it again. This is the individual's life. We are there to help them.
These interviews are challenging and complex, which is why it's important to remember to listen. Following the interview, be sure to gather with the multidisciplinary team to review interview notes and videos to determine the next steps. Interviewers should also ensure the victim remains physically and emotionally safe and away from anyone who can inflict harm on them. It is also important to look out for signs of vicarious trauma that are often the result of interviews with people who have been the victim of a crime. In this case, we also have a witness who saw the incident happen. People living with disabilities can also be helpful to meet with during the course of your investigation.
Mr. Richards, I'm Ben Sullivan, a state trooper assigned to the Disabled Persons Protection Commission. With me today is Diane White. She's an investigator with the DPPC. How would you like us to address you?
You can call me Tony.
Okay, Tony. Would you like to sit down?
I prefer to stand.
Okay. Can I get you a glass of water?
No.
Before we get started, Tony, we'd like to learn a little bit about you. What do you like to do for fun?
I like to make puzzles. They are beautiful.
Do you have any favorite types of puzzles?
I like puzzles with animals.
What do you like to do during the day, Tony?
I like to spend time with the other people in my learning program.
Tell me about the learning program.
It's interesting. I like the people in the program.
Well, thanks for telling us a little bit more about yourself. Before we get started, I want to let you know that we're taking notes today. The reason we take notes is because what you say is important, and we want to get it right. Do you know the reason we're meeting today?
Yes.
Tell me the reason why we're meeting today.
Because my friend John got hurt.
Tell me about John getting hurt.
Jason hurt him.
Tell me everything that happened when John got hurt.
Jason hit John in the head.
Tell me about Jason hitting John in the head.
He made John fall.
Tell me everything about John falling.
Jason pushed John and he hit the wall. John fell.
And Tony, what happened after John fell?
I don't know, but it was dark out.
And what happened next?
I don't want to get anyone in trouble.
Okay, I understand you don't want to get anyone in trouble. Tell me about that.
I like where I live. But John is my friend. Jason was mad at John.
You say Jason was mad at John. Tell me what you saw.
I don't know. He kicked John. It made John sad.
What happened next?
I don't know. I left. I didn't want to get in trouble.
You're not in any trouble, Tony. We're here to make sure John is safe.
John is my friend.
It's important to have friends. I can understand that.
What is going to happen to John?
We're going to make sure that John is safe.
Okay.
We also want to make sure you're safe. Is there anything about your safety you want us to know?
No. Only I saw him hurt John.
Thank you, Tony.
You're welcome.
Are you going to do any puzzles today?
I'm working on one with a lion.
That sounds great. I want to thank you for talking with us today. I know these questions can be challenging.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tony. You have our phone number. Please call us if you think of anything else you want to tell us, if you have any questions, or if you need our help.
Thank you.
An adult victim living on the autism spectrum, more often than not, is capable of communicating information to an APS or law enforcement investigator about their abuse or crime. By incorporating the forensic interview techniques demonstrated throughout this training, you will enhance the quality and quantity of information obtained from your interview, and in turn, increase your understanding of the appropriate responses necessary to meet the needs of the victim and the next steps in your investigation. So whether you are conducting an MDT investigation or responding to an emergency situation when interviewing an adult with a disability, remember, all you need to do is listen. Learn about the case and proactively prepare for your interview. Use integrity and ensure the person you're interviewing knows that they are being heard. Prioritize safety and safeguard the well-being of individuals and their autonomy. Use a trauma-informed approach. Employ empathy, tailored to the individual's needs. And be sure to remember your network and that you are part of a multidisciplinary team that is knowledgeable and there to help. That concludes our lesson. For more information on how to interview people living on the autism spectrum, please visit the DPPC website, which features more detailed interview tips. This video was produced by the Massachusetts Disabled Persons Protection Commission in partnership with the Building Partnerships for the Protection of Persons with Disabilities and Older Adults Initiative, BPI, Melwood Global, and the Model Consulting Group. This project was supported by the Administration for Community Living, ACL, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, as part of a financial assistance award totaling $2,547,279.08, with 100% funded by ACL HHS. The contents are those of the authors and do not necessarily represent the official views of, nor an endorsement by, ACL, HHS, or the U.S. government. Thank you so much for watching.